And you know what? When Donald Trump says Mark Carney owes him, he's kind of right, because he was a game changer.
Nik Nanos admits that Carney is only the prime minister because boomers are afraid of Donald Trump. We all know that, obviously, but it's what he says about the liberal support base that is more revealing.
The conservatives need that progressive vote to split.
So I did some digging to find out what could potentially happen in only a few short months from now, and it doesn't look good for the liberals. If you like seeing leftists getting exposed, hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button down below to help my video reach more people. Love me, hate me, agree or disagree. Let me know in the comments section.
So it seems to a lot of people in Ottawa that the budget kind of under-delivered, or at least was in some sense, underwhelming. How did it land outside of the political bubble?
Well, the thing is that we track every week, the issues and how people feel about the leaders and the ballot numbers. And, right now we see that the Liberals have about a 5-point advantage. It's like 42-37 in favor of the Liberals over the Conservatives. And to put that into context, Mike, 4 weeks ago, it was 39-37. So it was a statistical dead heat. A little bit of a bump for the Liberals coming up. The interesting thing is that the Conservative support, pretty rock solid. So no big change as a result of the budget. Liberals up a little bit. NDP down to 9%. And the thing is, that's bad for the Conservatives, because the Conservatives need that progressive vote to split in order for them to pop up through the middle. So a little bit of movement between the Liberals and the New Democrats coming out of the budget.
Now, this is no surprise, and the numbers don't lie. It's obvious that NDP voters jumped ship when Jughead Singh resigned as NDP leader. Silly fools. But what I find most revealing about their departure is not the fact that they're all afraid of the big bad orange man, but it's the runner-up issues. In a Global News article posted in May of this year, they stated that, according to Ipsos polling, 5% of NDP party switchers chose Conservative. Now, the key here is that these were in ridings that rely heavily on union workers. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? I think I may have seen an article or two about some recent union workers who aren't exactly too happy. And we all know that the NDP's bread and butter is their workers. So anyway, what does this mean? We'll talk about that later on.
There's been successive polls now where we've seen Prime Minister Carney with a lead over Pierre Poilievre. In your opinion, at what point does that kind of opinion with Canadians become kind of cemented and almost immovable in terms of preferred Prime Minister?
Well, usually whoever the Prime Minister is happens to have an advantage because they are Prime Minister. In this particular case, this is a pretty big advantage for Mark Carney over Pierre Poilievre. It's about 27 percentage points or thereabouts. But, the kicker, Mike, is this. For the Liberal support, it's not about people liking the Liberals. It's not about people liking the last 10 years. It's really about Mark Carney. For the Conservative support, which has been steady since the election, right? Still exceptionally high. And in some cases, the thing is at 37%, Stephen Harper won 2 elections with about that level of support. But for the Conservatives, it's not about Pierre Poilievre. It's about people that want change. They don't like the Liberals, and they want to see things go in a different direction. So think of it this way. So we got one party. I think for the Conservatives, I don't think those Conservative voters care who the leader is. They just want the Liberals out.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Not to say that it could be anyone, but certainly it doesn't really matter as much to them.
I believe the only thing that these numbers prove is that half the country is mentally ill. Preferred Prime Minister is an idiotic polling question anyway. The election was not that long ago, and Mark Carney has done nothing. Actually, he's made things worse. But there are no tangible accomplishments on Carney's resume as PM. So the only thing that people have to go on is the election itself. Plus, most people in Canada don't want to go back to the ballot boxes yet. So that recency bias could construe these results.
11 months ago, the numbers that you have presented and that you have given us today would have looked bizarre, because there's no world in which we would have thought preferred Prime Minister would have been a Liberal and that the Liberals were ahead. What does that tell you about where this country has come in the last 11 months?
Well, it speaks to the disruption and the game changer that Donald Trump was. And you know what? When Donald Trump says Mark Carney owes him, he's kind of right, because he was a game changer. The Liberals under Justin Trudeau were really on a path to likely decimation. Right? And he was an unpopular prime minister. People wanted change. And Donald Trump basically changed the math in favor of someone looking at least Canadians looking at alternatives. And so Pierre Poilievre did well in the last election, but Mark Carney as a person that can manage, or people perceived or thought had a better chance to manage that binational relationship, basically caught fire. But you know what, Michael? He still has to deliver, because talk is not enough, and people's patience as they worry about paying for the groceries and paying for housing will only last so long.
True. Prime Minister Carney called him a transformative prime minister, a transformative president. He's transformed a lot of your numbers. And of course, we know that the Prime Minister can't exactly kick the ball around when he goes for the FIFA World Cup draw next week. Hopefully, he does talk to President Trump.
Okay, so let's dive into this. And by the way, I think Mike Lecouteur is the best journalist at CTV. He's the only one that I watch where I, A, don't throw up in my mouth, and I believe is actually perfectly fair and unbiased. I shouldn't have said that, should I? That's probably going to backfire. Okay, so according to a Nik Nanos poll from back in March of this year, it shows the top 2 reasons for people switching to the NDP as Mark Carney being the new Liberal leader and Donald Trump's stance towards Canada, including annexation and tariffs. But when you look at the issues that these switch hitters care about as it pertains to their choice for the Liberal Party, the results are pretty glaring. The middle column represents the main issues that led to them switching. They believe that Carney would take care of the Trump problem. Then it's the cost of living, healthcare, and the economy. Makes you wonder why Nik Nanos doesn't do a poll showing what these temporary phony liberals think of Mark Carney's job so far on these issues. So in my opinion, I believe things are going to take a turn for the worse for the Liberal Party very soon. Does this mean that they're going to come crashing down? No. But support will begin to plateau, and the honeymoon phase that Carney is trying to drag out for as long as possible is going to feel old and tired for these new voters. If the Trump situation went away, and in March when a new NDP leader is elected, the numbers would probably shift back. And this is why Mark Carney doesn't want to resolve the situation with the US. At least that's how it seems. Well, that and his foreign interests with Brookfield and China's investment in modular homes. But having Trump as an issue is something that he relies on keeping those NDP voters on his side. The sooner Trump is dealt with, then the real issues will come to the forefront. But with the number of blunders that are building up, plus our very familiar economic instability, this is a slow-burning match that's going to burn out. The Liberal and NDPs will split again, and if the issue surrounding Trump disappears, more people will spill over to the Conservatives because Mark Carney is implementing semi-conservative policies anyway, except where it comes to domestic affordability issues, crime, and immigration. So the Conservatives need to shift their focus to the workers of Canada. It's a strategic move that I think will help pick off some of those NDP voters. Pierre does show support, but he needs to really hammer this home as his main issue. He doesn't need to abandon his stances on crime, immigration, affordability, or groceries, but put the main focus on the Canadian worker who's overtaxed and about to be broker because of this ridiculous budget. Make Mark Carney answer questions about workers in Parliament so they can sit at home and judge for themselves. If he's up there saying, "We're helping our workers," well, not only does that contradict the truth, but it also gives ammunition to the NDP party to use against Carney when they elect their new leader in a few months. I'm looking forward to a mass exodus, but we'll see.